Hello and welcome back to All You Can Board. I'm Carlo and today I'm going to be telling you about the 3 games I'm currently obsessed with and just can't wait to play more of, as well as 3 games that I have not yet tried that I can't wait to get to the table for the first time. So this video sort of ties in a little bit to my curating my collection series, which we run on the channel here. And in my last video I did for that series, which you can go back and watch, it was just a few videos ago on the channel, I talked about kind of my goals for the year in terms of my collection, games I'm going to be getting rid of, and sort of focusing a little more on either revisiting games that I've played and I'm really interested in, or playing through the unplayed games on my shelf, rather than focusing as much on kind of like the new hotness as I've been doing a little more over the past couple of years. So initially I thought about doing 5 for each of these categories. I decided that'd probably be a little too long in terms of what I want to say about these. So I broke it down to 3 each. There's a few criteria. First off, these are games, they have to be games that I own the physical copy of. So it can't be a game that's just digital that I don't have access to. The other thing is, there's kind of like a theme in general with these games, I'd say, whether it's the first 3 or the second group of 3 that I'm going to talk about. But they have a lot of the, not every single one of these, but most of these games have most of these criteria, which is, first off, these games have to have very difficult choices. You know, I want to be sort of agonizing over my moves. I want to be sitting there not knowing what I should be doing, kind of thing. There has to be a process of figuring things out and feeling like there's still a lot to learn and to sort of process, rather than just knowing, okay, that's clearly the best thing to do. So yeah, it's really important for me to not have a best obvious, or like an obvious best move in games, and I think none of these, from the ones I've played, I can pretty confidently say that, and the ones I haven't played, seems like they don't have that. So that's definitely really important for me. Also, just opportunity for clever plays. I like it in games where, whether it's me or someone else at the table, I respect it just as much if someone else makes a play, even if it is at my own detriment, to say like, wow, that was a brilliant play. Like, almost stand up and applaud or tip your hat to someone at the table, saying like, no one else saw that coming. I wouldn't have been able to make that play because I didn't kind of, based on my look at the board state, like I never even saw that coming. Like, well done, brilliant play. I love stuff like that in games. And a lot of these, as well, the other condition, which is maybe the most important one, is highly interactive. So a lot of these, if not all of them, are games where you feel almost like you're playing the player more than the game, where if you're just doing a heads down thing, looking at your own game state, whatever you have in front of you, you're not going to be able to win against good players because you have to constantly adapt based on what's going on. So a lot of these lean especially more into the tactical side rather than strategic. And for anyone who, I know we've had people sometimes add in the comments like, what does this term mean? You guys should do a video talking about terms. So just a very quick explanation of the difference between strategic and tactical for those who might not be aware. I guess they always say that, like, what is it? Tactics win battles, strategy wins wars. So the strategy is kind of like the bigger picture, something you do at the beginning of a game, saying, this is going to be my strategy, this game I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be, you know, trading goods, whatever. Tactical is sort of like every turn or throughout the game reassessing, I have to pivot and do this instead, or based on what's going on, I am going to do this. So there are games that are more purely tactical and more purely strategic. A lot of games have a combination of both, where you form a strategy and then need to make these tactical decisions along the way. But I think all of these games, most of them at least, lean more heavily into being tactical than strategic, which is something that just makes you have to reevaluate the game state a lot more often and sort of change and adapt your strategy and react to the other players. And those are the kinds of games that I'm looking to explore most in the next year. So I think of these as kind of like, if someone said, hey, for all of your game nights for the next year or 2, you can only pick 3 games to play at all those game nights, I would be more than happy just saying, sure, let's just play these 3 for the next year, because I think I'm going to get a ton of value and ton of just, fun out of these with a variety of people. So most of the other requirement I placed on myself restriction is that I can't have played the game already for these first 3 more than 2 or 3 times. So games like Keyflower and Renature, which you've seen me talk about in my top 10 games of all time, I've played those games upwards of, 7, 8, 10 times. So I'm trying to focus on games where I feel like I've just scratched the surface and newly discovered something, and I'm just eager to get it back to the table. So it's not games that have quite like satiated my appetite just yet. So I think I'll leave it at that. The first game I'm going to talk about, the one I'm probably most obsessed with right now, the one that's most on my mind, and if you've watched other videos on the channel recently where it's been mentioned, or you're part of our Discord or whatnot, then you might know which game I'm going to be talking about here, but that is Hansa Teutonica. So this is actually the big box version. So this originally came out in 2009, I believe it was. designed by Andreas Steding, and I think it was in 2020 where they released this kind of big box version. So it comes with a couple of different maps and whatnot. So I'm not going to get too into how the game plays or that kind of thing. I've spoken about this when we did our top 50 games of all time recently. This actually cracked my top 10 just after 2 plays. I've since played it one more time, so I've gotten 3 plays in now. The basic idea is that there's a map of the Hanseatic region of Germany, and you have 5 different possible actions you can take on your turn. At the start of the game, you're going to get 2 actions per turn. You can take the same action with both of those, or you can take different actions. You're going to be either placing, like your cubes in this game represent tradespeople or merchants or whatnot, or the discs, I guess, are merchants. But you have different, cubes in these discs. The discs are more powerful, and you're placing them on spots between cities to try and create trading routes between cities. When you complete a route, you can either put a sort of control marker, a trading post in one of the cities on the end of that route, or if the city has like an upgrade power available, instead of taking control of that city or getting a trading post, you can instead take an upgrade power, which is basically improving one of your actions or one of your endgame scoring conditions. And the game is very interactive. You're getting in people's way. They can, go to the spot you're in, but they have to pay an extra cost to bump you out of there, and then you also get an extra benefit and get to move those cubes or discs to another spot on the board nearby. You're getting in people's way just to force them to take more pieces, spend a higher cost to make them take longer to get where they want to go. There's a lot of different ways to score points. There's different ways to play the game. I've seen people, even just in the 3 games I've played, they've played out, there's been certain aspects of the game that have played out similarly, but overall, the games have felt significantly different from one to the next. I've played this with a couple of different groups of people now. Some of the people I've played it with have only played it once or twice, but I've already seen, one of the things that really intrigues me about this is this kind of meta, which is like kind of like this, how do I explain? There's this kind of like developing strategy that's bleeding over from one game to the next, and each time I'm playing, I'm having to consider, how is this new player going to approach this? I'm teaching them for the first time, but there's these other 2 players who I played with last time, and I know what they did, and maybe that person won. And so if I see, familiar early game moves, do I know how to stop them this time? I've played this 3 times now. I have not won yet. I think I've gotten last 2 of the 3 games, so I'm not doing particularly well at all. But what I love about this game, and why I can't wait to explore it more, is just the fact that every game, I could go play this with a different group of people, and the game could play out differently, because this really is a game that is, you have to react to what the other players are doing. I don't think you can go into Hansa Teutonica with a strategy at the beginning. It's not a strategy game, because if you say, for example, well, my goal is going to be is to build a network from this city to this city across the middle, really fast and efficient right through the middle, that's going to be, but if other players get in your way, you're not going to stubbornly stick to this arbitrary strategy that you came up with. So you can maybe have an early game strategy and say, hey, early game, I'm going to try to maybe go here. But it could be the very first turn you take, the second turn, the 4th or 5th turn, whatever. Soon enough, you will have to pivot, and you're going to have to adapt, and that tactical analysis is going to have to come into play, where you say, I guess I have to abandon that and go here, or maybe, is it worth it to get in this player's way? How much am I going to set them back? And an example I want to give is the last time we played this, Dylan and Braden were both in the game with me. I think we had a 4-player game, and it was Braden's first time playing, and I was about halfway through the game. I was in an excellent position. I felt like I was kind of off in my own corner. I saw people doing what has been, I think a couple people in our group have expressed a little bit of concern with the predominant kind of early rush to get the upgrade, to get the extra action, to be able to have 3 actions on your turn instead of 2, and that a lot of people fight over that spot. So even though I didn't go in the game with a strategy, I remember thinking that's probably going to be hotly contested. I want to see if I can sort of go off in my own corner and do something undisturbed where players will be forced to come and stop me. So I tried going to another spot on the board. I think it was the one for either the what is it called? The privilegium or whatever, to be able to unlock the different spots, or no, it was the income to get more traders out of your supply or whatnot. And I had both the cities on the end of this trade route. I was just scoring points. I was in such a great spot. And then Braden pulled what I thought was the game-changing move, because he stuck one of his merchants, the little disc, in one of the spots, and based on where I was at in the game, the amount of cubes I had in my supply, the amount of actions I had per turn, it was basically like someone slashing my tires. I was feeling like I was in such a good position, and as soon as this happened, I remember thinking I have to rethink my whole turn, because I can't accomplish what I need to do now. I can't convert these into another, trading post or complete this trade route. but to go somewhere else is going to ruin my plans, and if I can't do this, and it completely ground my game to a halt, and I went from feeling in control, like I felt confident that I was going to potentially win that game, and then I ended up getting dead last, and I didn't know how to recover once he did that move, and it was a feeling of like I was frustrated and like almost angry at him at the table, but in a way that I want to be angry at someone at the table when playing a board game, in a way that made me think like, again, brilliant play. I kind of tipped my hat to him and said like, well done for spotting what I was doing and for taking a turn to just get in my way. He didn't gain, I don't think he gained anything from it that turn, but he offset me and made me change my plan enough, and Braden ended up winning. And it was his first time playing, and it was one of those ones where, again, I had so much respect and appreciation for how that game played out, but like the whole night, like I was up late that night thinking like, how could I have gotten back in the game? How could I have gotten back at him? How could later when he had 5 actions, how could we have gotten in his way? Or how could I have positioned myself better from the start? So we haven't even, there's in the box, there's different variants you can play with to change up the game a bit. There's different maps you can play. I think one of them even has like a, maybe not a team version. There's something that changes the rules quite a bit. There's different types of spots on the other maps. And even just people I've spoken to, there's someone in our Discord, Chris Schaden, who I know has also been playing Hans Teutonica lately, and he has mentioned to me recently he's played it a bit more than I have, and what I was sort of expecting would be like, hey, I think our next few games, people are going to start trying this kind of thing. He kind of told me that's what's been happening in their games, so I'm eager to see this kind of like organic growth of how the game gets played in my group and playing it with different people, and it just feels like it's unpredictable. You have to be on your toes all the time, and as you can tell just by how much I have to say about this game, I'm just obsessed with it, probably more than any game right now. Hope to play this a lot more this year, and at some point we will do a more in-depth like actual review on the channel. But yeah, and I should have mentioned, it's only 3 to 5 players. I haven't played it yet with 3, I don't think. I've only played it with 4, and not even 5. I think I've always played it with 4. Anyways, amazing, amazing game. Can't wait to play it more, and I will have plenty more to say about it some other time. It's Hans Teutonica, big box edition specifically. All right, next one up on my list is The Estates. So this is we just talked about this in a recent video, so if you haven't seen our last video about the games we don't like, but yeah, anyways, obviously you know it wasn't me that talked about not liking it, but we talked about this game quite a bit already. It's a game also, this is 2 to 5, I guess. I don't know, 2 to 5? I don't know if I would ever play this with 2. I thought it was 3 to 5. Anyways, The Estates is a game that in some ways is an auction game, and in some ways is I don't know what to brand it as, type of game, spatial, like it's not area control quite, but it's a game that is driven by the auctions, but the game is played on a board where you're basically kind of like real estate developers. There's a city that has 3 streets on it, or a development of the city that has 3 streets, and the basic premise of the game is each of these 3 streets has a bunch of empty spaces, lots where you can build developments. And so the game is going to end when 2 of those 3 streets are filled up and are completed, which means that the buildings have been completed, so you're getting these kind of floor cubes that you can stack onto each other to build buildings, and then you have to put a rooftop on it, and once the roof is on the building is complete. So once you have 2 streets that are filled with buildings with rooftops, the game ends, and anyone who owns buildings on the completed streets is going to score positive points for those, but that one incomplete street where there's, potentially however many buildings, there could be 0 buildings, there could be multiples, whatever. If there are buildings on the street, they're all going to score negative points for whoever owns them. And you own buildings based on who's the first person to buy a building from or win an auction with a building of a particular color. But then you also have to, it's whoever has the top, whoever is the owner of the color in the top of the building is the only person who owns the building, regardless of all the colors of cubes underneath. So anyways, I won't get into too much more into the rules, but you're basically picking on your turn, which piece do you want to auction off? Do you want to auction off one of the floor cubes? If so, are you picking one of your own color, one of your opponent's colors? Do you want to win this auction, or do you know it's a valuable piece that you want to make a bunch of money, so maybe you pick something that you know someone's going to pay you a lot of money for. There's a closed economy. Again, we talked about this more in the last video in terms of how it plays, so I'll leave it at that. But what makes me want to revisit this so much, and what has just kind of like wormed its way into my brain, is a similar thing that I mentioned about Hans Teutonica, where it's never obvious. I mean, maybe once you get really, really good at the game, but at least for where I'm at with the game, the way out or the solution to my predicament or whatever is never obvious, and it feels like I always have to, if I'm going to get out of this, I have to do something clever. I have to really use my brain and think outside the box. It's not just, oh, if I go here I get this many points, and if I go there I get that many points, so obviously I'm going to take the more points. And nothing is the values are changing throughout the game. So even if I say right now, if I were to do that, that would be good for me. But 3 turns later, I might look back and say, that was actually terrible because someone now built on top of that, and now I don't even own that building, but I spent money to buy the piece that now is going into someone else's building that's going to score them points. Or maybe I invested a lot in something that ends up on the street that's negative points. And there's different pieces. You can auction off a mayor that changes the value, that doubles the value of points on a street, or you can extend or shorten the requirements of a street so that people think this is going to get completed, and then suddenly, note, you need 3 more full buildings here, and suddenly now this is going to be negative. So there's so much up in the air until the end, and there's kind of this like bullying aspect in the auction with whoever has the most money can really throw their weight around and kind of determine who gets what, and has a lot of power in the way that the game goes. And there's just this aspect of people have won the game many times with negative scores, I've heard. I've played this twice now. The first time I played, I got absolutely demolished. I think the 2 players I played, we played as a 3-player game. I think the top 2 were like 30-something and 20-something points, and then I had like negative 18. Like I lost by like 30, 40 points. I wasn't upset. I didn't care. Like I was just fascinated with the game and wanted to play it again because even though I lost by that much, we all agreed at the table. There was a scary point where my opponents looked at me and then I think Carlo's actually going to be able to win this. And I misplayed it slightly, but I had set up in a way that I thought I was going to be able to tank the economy. And if it had gone my way, we would have all ended with negative scores, but they would have had way more negative than me. And it was that kind of glimpse at what the game could be, that even though I made certain mistakes and fell behind, that I could pull this play at the end that would basically completely like pull the rug out from under my opponents. And there's just something hilarious about that to me. And there's something that not many games can evoke that kind of experience, and you have to play these games with the right people who are okay with that kind of thing. It's probably the meanest game we've played. It's going to upset a lot of people at the table, I think. Depending on who you play it with, I think you have to go into this game with the right mindset or just know what you're going into. But anyways, fascinating game. I think this originally came out in earlier mid-2000s, if I'm not mistaken, and then got republished as a German game. I think it was called the Neue Heimat or something like that, and then got kind of republished by Capstone with this really nice edition a few years back in 2017 or something like that. Anyways, The Estates, designed by Klaus Zock, pardon me. I can't wait to play this game more. I just figure, I imagine it probably won't be with Dylan much based on his initial thoughts, but we will talk about it more on the channel at some point. And the third game that I'm currently obsessed with, that I just can't wait to dive into more this year, is Winter Kingdom. So this is designed by Donald X. Vaccarino, same designer as Spiel des Jahres winners Dominion and Kingdom Builder. This is sort of an updated take on Kingdom Builder that sets itself apart quite a bit. This is also 2 to 4 players. It has a lot of the same basic framework of, you're placing 3 of these little settlements on the map per turn, and then you can get these bonus abilities that allow you to sort of either add more pieces to the map or maybe pull ones off and move them elsewhere to kind of jump around the adjacency restriction. Like you'd still do start your turn by drawing a card, or you've drawn at the end of your previous turn. I guess you have it in your, but you start your turn by showing the card that you have and then having to basically obey by that restriction. Whereas, like, let's say if I reveal a forest card, if I have any piece on the map that is adjacent to at least one forest that is still empty, you have to place where it's adjacent. So when possible to place adjacent to that land, you must. Otherwise, if I wasn't adjacent to forest, then I could go anywhere on the map. So there's this aspect of where you expand, and the more things you're adjacent to, you're limiting where you can branch out. But the abilities in this game, and there's one of these days we've talked about this before, we're going to do a Winter Kingdom versus Kingdom Builder comparison video, so I'm not going to go too in-depth on this here, and especially the differences between the 2 games, but I'm going to just try and highlight what about this makes me want to play this more, and we'll save the comparisons to Kingdom Builder more for another time. But this game is a lot less restrictive than Kingdom Builder, so because of how open it is, it's a bigger map. There's 7 of these big hexagonal hexagonal squares, that doesn't make any sense, hexagonal tiles that go out on the board to make this big map. And there's like tunnels where you can tunnel from one spot to another. The powers are just a little more freeing, and because in this game, you start with the powers in your hand, and you have to use in a system of economy where you gain coins different ways in the game, depending what cards are out, and then you choose with your coins how to spend them on the abilities. Do you want to play multiple different ability cards from your hand so that you have different types of abilities, or do you want to play one and then spend that money upgrading that one so that you have a stronger version of that one ability? And your abilities are going to be different from your opponents throughout the game, so you're sort of throughout the game, you're kind of deciding, how do I build my own little engine? What's my priority? Do I need to get to certain spots? Are the scoring conditions, the 3 scoring conditions that are set out at the beginning of the game? Because other than the majority around the castles, you're just going to have 3 cards that tell you where you get the most, if not all, of your points in the game. So you're looking at what's more important. Am I trying to prioritize those conditions? And which condition is most important to me? Which of those 3 cards do I think is going to be able to score me the most points? And if so, how important is it that I get there and get into a spot early ahead of my opponents? How important is it for me to, instead focus on getting income so that I can use that money to get more abilities? Or what's more important, if I see an opponent who's going somewhere very lucrative for them, maybe I need to spend this turn getting in their way. But am I going to be able to get in their way enough based on their abilities, or am I going to see them circumvent my kind of blocking next turn anyways and realize I should have done something else? So it's one of those games where, because the decision space is so wide, because there's so many options and so many places you can go, more than most games I've played, I feel like, this is the way I'll think of it, is if on a scale of, like, let's say 0 to 10 or 1 to 10 or whatever, with 10 being I've mastered the game and 0 or 1 being I've barely scratched the surface, I barely know what I'm doing kind of thing, I'm probably somewhere around a 2 or 3 or maybe a 4 at most with Winter Kingdom. Like, I play the game, I know I'm playing it by the correct rules, I know that I understand technically what I should be doing, but there are so many little factors at play, and with all the spaces you can go to and the different things you can do with the abilities, the options they open up, it just feels like this mind-bending puzzle that I know the first couple games I played has caused a decent amount of analysis paralysis with pretty much everyone at the table, but I know that there's a beautiful kind of, like, incredible, unique, rewarding experience there waiting for me, and I know that it's going to take a few more plays to get over the hump of kind of like the weird rulebook and things like that, but what this game does that Kingdom Builder did well, that it preserves, that is like why I love these games so much, is that aspect of you can take a turn and the players at the table can go, did you just cheat? Like, you just broke the game. How did you do that? Like, hey, sorry, tell me how you did that. And you're like, okay, well, I did this, and then I used this ability to move here, and now I'm no longer adjacent to this, so that means that I can place my 3 over here, so now I can do this. And the players just go like, wow, like, when you show people a new game, like, wow, I can't believe, like, how did you do? Okay, I kind of see what's going on now. And people, you see that click with people and you show them the game, and when you're playing with people even who are familiar, and again, it's that kind of thing I've mentioned in the past about Renature. I mentioned it about, I can't remember which of if it was for Hansa or the Estates before, but that aspect of just being able to kind of, tip your hat at someone's brilliant play. I love what this game does. Can't wait to play it more. It's not quite on the same level as Hansa Teutonica and the Estates for me, mainly because I don't know how much I want to play this with people who haven't played Kingdom Builder or tried this yet. I think there's going to be maybe too much of a discrepancy between my experience level and someone who hasn't played either game. So it's going to be a little more situational where I play this and when, but definitely going to play a lot more and talk about it a lot more on the channel in the future. Winter Kingdom. So, quick honorable mention to 2 games that were very, very close that almost made this. One is Le Havre. Won't talk about it too much. It was in the past video as well if you want to hear mine and Dylan's thoughts about it. The main reason it didn't make this video is just, first off, I really, until I get more familiar with the game, I really only want to play it with 2 players, and it is a very long game, so I don't think I'm going to be playing it a lot over the next year, but definitely a few more times. And the other one is Dice Realms, and Dice Realms is just, it's still pretty new to me. It's a fairly new game, and similar to Winter Kingdom, I just feel like there's a lot left for me to see, and I just don't know entirely where I land on it, and because it's a dice-based game, I don't have the pull to play that one quite as much, but if I had to pick 2 more, it would have been Le Havre and Dice Realms for sure. So now I'm going to talk about the 3 games that are unplayed on my shelf that I'm most eager to get to the table. So quick just disclaimer about this right now is 2 of these games I've never even read the rule book, so some of these I have varying levels of like what I can really say about them, but so they're going to be a little more brief, but the first one I'll start with, which I do have a little more to say about, is Fresh Fish. So this is designed by Friedemann Friese, who's quickly risen up the ranks for me as one of my favorite designers. He's designing super interesting games all the time. So this, I think, originally came out in, what was it? I think it was like 97 or early 2000s. I think it was late 90s or early 2000s. And then it kind of like was in, I guess, like state of purgatory for a while. It wasn't getting printed. And then I think they reprinted this edition in 2014 or whatnot. So it's a pretty hard to find game. There's a lot of people who thought it was kind of a grail game. It was one of those very divisive games, I think. A lot of people bounced off it, didn't like it. And really, I can't think of any game like it from what I know about it, and that's part of the reason. And that's kind of a theme with Friedemann Friese's games. He definitely prioritizes unique experiences and kind of quirky designs and thinking outside the box more than making sure that like everything is balanced or that it's going to be the most widely accessible or approachable game, if that makes sense. Like I don't think he's designing games thinking what's going to climb into the top 10 on BGG because so many people in the world are going to love it. It's just that he's designing games that are maybe fill a niche a little bit more, but the people who like them, chances are, will love them, and they've got a bit of character and quirkiness about them that really set them apart. So, and I've talked about some of his other games on the channel, but Fresh Fish. So the basic idea is that there's going to be stands for 4 different types of goods throughout the game. You're competing on this kind of map it's basically kind of like at a market, and you have these trucks. There's for fish, soda, ice cream, and cheese, I believe. So they're all items that you want to have fresh when they're the freshest, cold, whatever. And each player throughout the game is going to be putting out their own corresponding stands, one for each of those 4 types. So I want to have, again, a fish stand, ice cream, soda, and cheese. But you want to have your stands as close to the trucks as possible so that you have the freshest fish. It has the fewest spaces to travel. So if you're right next to the fish truck and the fish can get from the truck to your stand in 1 move or in 2 moves, that's very fresh, right? If your opponents are further away from the truck and it needs to get 6 moves to them, you have fresher fish than them, right? So that's the kind of basic idea of the game. And on your turn, you're either reserving a spot, so you're either putting a little disc on the map to kind of reserve a spot in this market, or you're flipping a tile, a face-down tile from this deck, or from this stack. And the face-down tiles can either be the shop or the markets or stands that you put out on the board, which when you pull one of those, it's going to have to replace one of your discs. Or it's going to be one of these flea market tables, which a flea market table is basically going to interrupt a path that someone else has. So let's say your opponent had this path straight ahead, and now you put a flea market table right in the middle. It's as if you're opening a stand for someone else at the market, and now people have to go around that, and maybe there isn't even a road or a path around there, or maybe they have to go so far around now that it's a 12 step path instead of 9 or whatnot. So, and at the end of the game, the player with the fewest points wins, the lowest score, because your total score is how many spaces are you away from everything. So if I'm 2 spaces away from the ice cream truck with my stand, that's 2 points. If I'm 7 points away with the other, that's 7 points. So you want to have a low score, and whatever your total is from those stands, you also subtract how much money you have left over. So I think I watched a playthrough this not too long ago. I think it was I kind of skimmed through it, and I think the winning score was 2 or 3. Like, it really is a game of efficiency and of blocking, of getting in people's way. That aspect of not only where are you reserving spots, but when a spot comes up, where are you putting that flea market table? And if it's not a flea market, if it's one of the stands that comes up that you didn't want to come up early or later, I haven't played anything like this, and I've heard it's a game that is tough to parse the board state. You have to play it apparently it's a game that I've heard can be played in 20-30 minutes with experienced players who know what they're doing. Usually takes, I think, closer to the kind of 45, it says in the box 45 minutes, but I've heard a lot of people say play it half hour or less, especially with 2 or 3 players. And by the way, I should have mentioned before, it's 2 to 5. But yeah, there's just something about that aspect. And spatial games normally are games that are very thinky and hard to... It's usually something where you can take a piece, like a polyomino game, put it and say, I'm going to turn this way or turn this way. And this one, you're kind of analyzing a board state that has a bunch of unknowns. And one thing I want to highlight too is this new edition came with an updated rule set, which streamlined the game and made it a little more approachable. So I'm going to put this call out to anyone watching this right now. For anyone who has played both versions of Fresh Fish, please let me know in the comments below, because I'm on the fence about when I finally try this, which way do I go? Because some people swear by the new rules and say that that's the way to go. Other people swear by the old rules. I've heard that the new rules just make it a little more, guide the players a little more, make it easier to see where the values are in things and maybe where you should be going. Whereas the old rules apparently make it more opaque, and it's more like you have to there's a bit more of a challenge and things are less obvious. So by the sound of it, I'm leaning towards playing it with the old rules. But yeah, for anyone who's tried, please let me know in the comments below. But yeah, Fresh Fish, I just can't wait to play this, and we'll absolutely be talking about this on the channel quite a bit. Fascinating game, Fresh Fish. Okay, next up, the next one I'm dying to try is Caylus 1303. So this is by William Attia and published by, what is this one? Space Cowboys, I think. Yep. And this is for 2 to 5 players as well. So Kalis, the original Kalis came out in 2005, 2005, somewhere in that range. It's sort of known as, it's not the first worker placement game ever, but I think it's the first big worker placement game that kind of put worker placement on the map, which was the start of Agricola, which is my #1 game of all time, is said to have been very much inspired by Kalis. So I've always wanted to try Kalis since I got into the hobby. I've heard for years and years and years about how kind of instrumental of a game it is, how iconic it is, how interactive and mean it can be, and how getting in your opponent's way is just as important sometimes as accomplishing your own goals, which is something I really love about Agricola. And so I bought Kalis 1303 after hearing a lot of just like buzz about how this has kind of improved and streamlined and also made the original game this plays a lot quicker apparently and just gives more replay value because there's variable setup and characters you can get and stuff. So this one I know less about in terms of the rules and how it plays, but compared to the other ones. But from what I understand, there's a path you are traveling along, like a kind of a one-way road, and you can kind of skip spots on your turn with your worker, or you can just, you can say, I'm going to go to the next one. You can say, I'm going to skip 3 spots ahead and go to that spot or whatnot. But there's this thing called the provost, which can be moved around by any player. I don't know how you do it. Again, I don't know the rules exactly. I don't know if it's an action on the board or that you have to go to, but you can move this provost on the board to different spots, either ahead or behind certain players, and that will either block people from taking certain actions or render certain action spaces unavailable to the other players. Again, I'm not 100% sure on the details, but it's that aspect of, do you want to do something right now to get yourself some resources, get ahead, or do you recognize that if you let that player do something, it's going to be so detrimental to the rest of the player, to you, that you need to get in their way? That I love, and just again the fact that Agricola is my #1 game of all time, and this is by all accounts seems to be its biggest influence, or sorry, the original Kalis, I should say. And this one just has the updated kind of artwork and everything. As soon as I saw a copy of this available, I picked it up. I think this one was released in 2019. So yeah, I think this one says it plays in 60 to 90 minutes, and I heard the old one was kind of closer to 2 hours. So anyways, I can't wait to try Kalis 1303. And if you've tried both, maybe let me know in the comments below. I'm kind of curious what you think of both. I'm actually hoping, my plan is to go try the original Kalis first on Board Game Arena, and then after playing that one a couple times to try this one, because once I try this, I have a feeling I won't want to go back and try the older, longer, more cumbersome, more complicated one. I shouldn't say more cumbersome without having played it, but anyway, Kalis 1303, can't wait to play it. And the third and final game that I cannot wait to play, this is a big one, is Glen More II Chronicles. So this is, it says 2 to 4 players on the box, but I was informed recently by someone on our Discord that there is a solo mode. I don't know if it's online or if it's in the rules and they just didn't put it on the box. Plays in 90 to 120 minutes based on the box. So this is a fascinating game to me because first off, I want to highlight the Chronicles aspect is that there are basically 8 different modes of play in the box. So there's sort of the basic rules of the game, and then each time you play, you pick one of the 8 Chronicles, and they have sometimes new tiles that they add in, new sets of rules, new restrictions, new goals that you're going for. It really changes up what you're trying to do, your incentives, that kind of thing. But the basic idea is there's kind of a rondel, so there's this kind of circular rondel on the board with different tiles on it. And it uses a turn order system similar to something like Patchwork or Tokaido, where the furthest person back on the rondel gets to take their turn. So you're going to move forward as many spaces as you want, you're going to land on a tile, you're going to take that tile, and you're going to add it to your little territory, your estate, whatever it's called. When you add the tile, it's going to trigger the effect of that tile as well as any surrounding tiles, up to 8. So you could leave a gap in the middle, you could have this kind of box, put a tile in there, and it triggers the diagonal tiles as well. So the combos and the synergies of where you're laying tiles, how you're building out these adjacencies, where you're setting up potential combos, but then you're also having to keep an eye on your opponent, because if you see this, again on the board, oh, that tile, if I let them get that combo so well with what they have going, so maybe you're going to skip ahead and maybe you skip a tile that you really wanted just to go ahead of it to grab the tile that your opponent wanted even more than you, and maybe now they take the tile you wanted, or maybe they don't, who knows. But the decision again of what are you doing, and in terms of your own goals, getting the other person's way, and the replayability in this game to me looks like it's going to come from not only the even if you just played the same Chronicle over and over, the order that the tiles come out, where they are on the map, who takes what first, the shape that you build them onto, when you trigger which combos, so which things you have in excess or not. I haven't even mentioned there's a board with these little territory spots. I don't even know what the board is for. I haven't looked into that part yet, but someone, again, the same person on Discord, Mark, shout out Mark, who has told me about the solo mode, has also said, I think this guy, and I think he's someone who's played, I think, 700-800 games or so, has said that if he could only keep one game in his entire collection, that this might be it, just because of the value here. And that, like, I was already intrigued enough about the game beforehand, and I had that kind of impression that because of the 8 Chronicles, that it's one of those games that seems like, hey, if you like this kind of thing, then you're going to love what comes in this box because you can just play it forever. And so now this feels like that type of game where I want to play it ideally as a 2-player game. I want to find one person who like is equally interested, whether that's Dylan or Braden or another friend of mine, whatever. And I want to say, like, do you want to commit to playing through all these Chronicles over the next few months or whatever? And I just want to sit down and dig into this game and play it a lot. I've heard it's also really good at 3, but I think I want to play through it a bunch with 2 players first. But I don't have anything quite like this in my collection. The other thing I'll highlight real quick is when I was flipping through the rule book, the acknowledgements, or like the people we have to, the special thanks section at the end, was bigger than I think I've seen in almost any rule book. And it seems like it was kind of a collaborative effort. And who was it now? I'm blanking on it now in terms of who. It wasn't Uwe Rosenberg. There was a designer's name that I saw in the kind of credits for this that I remember thinking, oh, as if they had a hand in this game, that made me think, well, now I want to play it even more. Maybe it was Uwe Rosenberg. I feel like I'm doing a discredit to whoever it was if it wasn't Uwe Rosenberg. But anyway, there's a designer. I'll try and remember to put it in the comments below I'll look into it after this video. But anyways, just can't wait to play this game. If you have played it, or if you played the original, the first Glen More, maybe let me know what you think. Or if you've played this one and there's particular Chronicles that you think are better than others, maybe let me know about that. And as I did with the first category there, I'm going to throw in 2 quick honorable mentions, which were, what were they? Am I gonna remember? Oh, Guards of Atlantis 2. Almost made this list. It's just that the only other kind of MOBA style game that I've played so far is Cloudspire, and the rules were it was a tough game to get back to the table a bunch. So even though I'm really excited to play Guards of Atlantis 2, because it's a very niche game, it just didn't quite make my top 3 here. And the other one was Fields of Arle, which is a 1 or 2 player only Uwe Rosenberg kind of big box game. I have it at home. I'm going to learn it to play it solo first one of these days, and it looks amazing. I'm very excited for it, but because I'm looking for these kind of interactive experiences with multiple people at the table, it's just not quite in the top 3. And one final note, just because I was kind of surprised, I got to Dylan's house to film this video, or Dylan's condo here, and he had a sort of a gift here that had come in from sort of someone who I believe might want to remain anonymous, but to that person, if you're watching, I just want to say thank you so much for the secondhand copy of Tigris and Euphrates, French copy, Tigre et Euphrates, which I speak French anyway, so I can read the rules, and I've played the game before. But the reason, this is an honorable mention because it didn't fall into either of these categories, because first off, I haven't played the physical version of the game, so it didn't feel right naming it as one of my first 3 that I'm currently obsessed with, because I didn't even know until like an hour ago when I got here that I was going to have access to playing this game. And the other thing is that it didn't feel right putting it in my unplayed games section with these other 3 I just spoke about, because I have played it on Board Game Arena. So it might be the game I'm potentially most eager to play, but it kind of just arrived. So thank you so much once again for that incredible gift. Very thoughtful. And yeah, that's it. Those are the games that I'm most obsessed with now, and the ones that I can't wait to play next. Let me know what you think of these games, if you either have or haven't played them, or any of these games that maybe you hadn't heard of that you're now interested in, or games that you've played that you think I am really going to like or not like, or let me know what your picks would be. Do you have games in your collection that you're obsessed with, or maybe they're not games in your collection that you just really want to dive into, or what are some unplayed games on your shelf that you want to get to the table? I think it's a fun discussion. I think it's, again, a good sort of approach to take to the hobby once in a while, when I know we sort of as content creators tend to fall into the cycle of playing all the new games all the time and trying to stay on top of the hotness, and there's obviously a lot of value in that as well, but it feels good to go back and kind of dig into our collections and play some of these old favorites, or visit new games that we haven't discovered before. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.